Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today we're going to talk about the Goodreads Choice Awards winners. I debated on when to put out this video because I wanted to talk about the books that I voted for, on the success of my predictions, but I also wanted to talk about who wins, and you don't get to know who wins until the very last week. So that is why this is coming out about a week later than I originally had planned, because I kind of wanted to just give it to you guys all at once and not overload you with Goodreads content. So yeah, let's talk about the winners and what I think. First, I'm going to talk through the categories that I gave a reaction to at the very beginning of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that is the romantasy category, the fantasy category, and the horror category. So I'll start with fantasy because that is my primary genre. That is the one that I did my predictions list of 20 books that I thought were going to be on the list, and I predicted that Fourth Wing was going to win and that Hellbent was going to be number 2. I'm going to call both of those wins because of the romantasy category. Fourth Wing got moved into the romantasy category. It did win. And then Hellbent won the fantasy category. So I'm going to say I predicted both of those accurately. I've read Fourth Wing. I have not read Hellbent yet. And whenever I did that original prediction video, I really did not want Fourth Wing to win because I do think there's so many other fantasy books out there that are better. But we all know that popularity is king whenever it comes to Goodreads Choice Awards. And I think that's fair. You're going to get votes whenever you have name recognition and when the book is so big and has so much readership. So I'm not complaining about it. We all know what it is. I just think it was a little easier to predict in those categories for this year. And then I also predicted within the horror category. I didn't do a full out predictions video for this, but I just looked through the list. I did a reaction video whenever it first came out. If you haven't seen that, I'll link it down below as well as up in the cards. But I predicted that Stephen King was going to win. I think I said Stephen King, Grady Hendrix, or Stephen Graham Jones. And number 1 was Holly by Stephen King, and number 2 was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So once again, I don't know that, I think the predictions are really fun, but I'm going based on popularity, name recognition. If Stephen King is in the running, he's going to be in the top of the list just because of the fact that a lot of people know who Stephen King is. Now, moving on to who I voted for. And so I will tell you guys who I voted for in the initial category in the initial round, and then in the second round, and then kind of what I think about where they landed. So in fantasy, the first round, I voted for The Will of the Many, which came in 15th out of the 20. And I knew going in that The Will of the Many probably wasn't going to make the top 10. I am sad about it. This category, fantasy, was the hardest category for me to vote in because I did have a lot of heavy hitters in this they will be on my top books of the year list whenever that comes out later this year. I absolutely loved Emily Wilde's. I absolutely loved Amina Al-Sarafi. I loved Tress of the Emerald Sea. I loved The Book That Wouldn't Burn. There were a ton of books on the fantasy list that I absolutely loved and were close to my heart. And so when I originally made that decision for The Will of the Many, it was definitely one of those decisions that I was I could change my mind the next day. But I do so think that The Will of the Many deserve to be there. And I hope that in the future, when Goodreads does their Goodreads Choice Awards, that more books like The Will of the Many and more epic fantasy, more big chonky fantasy worlds end up in the list because of the fact that that romantasy category has been kind of separated. I feel like in the past, some of those larger fantasy books, epic fantasy novels, have been a little overlooked because of some of the more popular specifically romantasy books that end up in that category. Not saying that they were never represented, but I do think that it was an underrepresented category. So I am happy that The Will of the Many made the list, as well as The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I think whenever I did my predictions video, I predicted that The Book That Wouldn't Burn was going to be on the list, but it wasn't going to make top 20, I think is what I predicted. It wasn't going to make top 10. I predicted it was going to make top 20. So The Will of the Many did not make it into the second round, and so in the second round, I voted for Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which I absolutely loved, which ended up coming in 4th in the ranking, which I was very surprised by, happily surprised, and so I was glad to see that. As far as romantasy, in the first and second round, I voted for The Hanging City. The first round, I had not read the book yet. I just knew that it was on my TBR and I thought it sounded fascinating, and that's why I voted for it. And then the second round, I had read the majority of the book, and I do think it deserved to be in this category. It ended up getting 8th, and I am surprised that it ended up being as high as it was in this category because I have not heard anyone talk about it. So I am excited for it to be there. I will talk to you guys about my thoughts on The Hanging City later this month, but I am happy that it ended up where it was. And then moving on to the horror category, I voted for September House, both in the first round and the second round, and it got 7th place, which I think it should have been higher. Obviously, I wanted it to win. I knew that it wasn't going to with some of the heavy hitters that were on the list, but I am excited that it made it to top 10 because I really do think it deserved to be there. And it was 5th in the debut category, which is where I voted for it as well. In the first and the second category, or first and second round. And then the last category I voted in was YA fantasy. I have not read a lot of YA fantasy, and so I did vote for Spice Road, which I knew probably wasn't going to be super high on the list. It was 15th in the end. I think I had read two or three books in that category. And yeah, I thought Spice Road was the best out of all of those. I will be interested to see in the future, because of the category changes, if we continue to have so many authors that are repeated. Not necessarily that was in the YA category, but I know that fantasy, romantasy was repeated. I think we had within the thrillers, Frida McFadden I know was repeated. I know that there were several Rebecca Yarros out there, so Fourth Wing, and then I think also Rebecca Yarros had like a regular romance book that was out. So I'll be interested to see if something changes about that next year, because I know that that's been a topic of discussion with the Goodreads Choice Awards, so we shall see. 2 other books that I was pleasantly surprised with the results from Goodreads was Trust of the Emerald Sea. It was 2nd in fantasy, which I was really excited. I did not think that it was going to be that high. I knew it had a couple of things going for it as far as like marketing. It's secret project number 1. A lot of people were talking about it. There was a lot of buzz, and it did come out in January. So it had a lot of time to get that backership. And I absolutely loved backership readership. I absolutely love Trust of the Emerald Sea. And so I am excited that so many people voted for it. I just didn't expect it. And the second book that I was a little surprised with was A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher, in the horror category, got 3rd. I absolutely love that book as well, so I was excited to see T. Kingfisher getting up there in the horror category. Within my Goodreads videos every year, I always try and look at how many I've read and then how many I would like to read in the future. And there are a lot of books on these lists that I will probably get to at some point in time, but there are a few that I'm going to prioritize. Currently, at the time of filming this video, I have read 19 of the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards nominees, and I am excited by that number. I think that that's great. I do have 7 that I'm adding to my TBR that I would like to get to early in 2024, and so I'll talk about those here. The first book that I'm adding to my TBR is a little out of my comfort zone, and that is The Wishing Game. So this was actually in the fiction category. It is shelved on Goodreads as fiction, fantasy, and romance, and so I wonder if this is going to be a little bit of a genre blend. I have heard Elliot Brooks talk about this book. She really enjoyed it, and so that was what originally put this on my radar this year. I just haven't gotten to it. I do not read a lot of contemporary, and the plot of this sounds very contemporary. You have a main character who did not have a great childhood and found solace in books, and as an adult really still enjoys books and finds love for them, and I believe she's a teacher of some sort and is trying to help a younger boy. I don't know if I think there was something about adoption in the book as well. It's been a minute since I've read the synopsis. And there is some type of a contest where she can win the one and only book that is going to be written and published by the author that kind of affected her as a child. And I just think this sounds interesting because of the story surrounding her love of books. I think that even though it's in a contemporary setting, I can still kind of get into it. And I don't know where the fantasy aspect is going to come into play, so I'm interested in that. And then I think the romance, I don't know where the romance comes into play either, actually. speaking of that. So we shall see. I think it sounds fun. I've heard a lot of people talk about it, how they love this book, how it's a little hard-hitting, but definitely worth the read. Next is The Coworker by Frida McFadden. So this is an author that I read earlier this year. I read The Locked Door and absolutely loved it. And so I would like to read more by this author. I was happy to see this author, I think, was on the mystery thriller list twice. I believe she won with The Handmaid's Secret, which I think is a sequel. So I would like to read that as well. But then The Coworker is also on the list, and that has been on my TBR. I just haven't picked it up. It is about two office workers. There is a crime of some sort at the office. I believe one of the characters is like a workaholic and ends up not showing up to work one day, which is very concerning because it's very out of character. And the other person who works in the office with her starts digging into why she didn't show up and finds out some pretty dangerous things, I think is what happens. So I'm excited to read more by Frida McFadden. And yeah, I was excited that she was on the list multiple times. Next on the list is Bookshops and Bone Dust. I was going to get to this in December for my 5 Goodreads Choice nominees picks for a bucket listathon, and it just didn't happen. I got to other reads instead, and I do still plan on picking up Bookshops and Bone Dust. If you haven't heard of this, this is the sequel to Legends and Lattes, which is a cozy fantasy about an orc who opens up a coffee shop. And the Bookshops and Bone Dust is the prequel to that book. So I'm excited to read more about Viv and her life before settling down as a barista. I think that this is going to be great. Next is a sci-fi pick, and it is recommended by Leandra. I am going to pick up Starter Villain. I think this sounds fantastic. The cover is enough to get me. I think that books about cats I usually have a good time with, and this is supposed to be a world that features cats, and they're walking around talking to each other and acting like people, and that's kind of all I know about it. That's all I want to know about it. I know that this book is a little bit like a fever dream, and I think it's going to be great. I think that this is an author I've never picked up before, and from what I've heard, I don't think that this is his norm. So I'm excited to see what I think of John Scalzi's writing, and then perhaps I will pick up something else by him by the end of the year as well. Next is another sci-fi read, which is a The Genbot of Shantyport. This has been on my TBR for a little bit, and I honestly just forgot about it. And so when I saw it on the list, I was glad that it kind of reminded me that this is something I'd wanted to read. This is sci-fi about a girl, I can't remember her name, and she is on a city, I believe it's sci-fi dystopian. And so it's a city, a planet, I think, that is essentially in a bad way, and people are leaving and kind of abandoning the planet. I can't remember if it was abandoning the planet or the city. I think it was the planet though. And one of the things that caught my eye about the synopsis of this book is this girl has a sibling, but the sibling is a monkey bot. I don't know what that means. I think it sounds fantastic. And I think when I first heard about this, this was on Literature Science Alliance channel, and they were talking about the fact that this kind of was a mix of Aladdin and something else sci-fi, and I think the monkey comes into play in that. I believe the girl gets kind of mixed up into some dangerous things that could potentially change the destination or the destiny of her planet or city. But yeah, I think it sounds fantastic. This cover I think is amazing as well. So I'm excited. I am trying to add more sci-fi to my TBR this year or this next year. And so I think this will be a great addition. Next is Black Sheep. This is an author I have been wanting to get to for a while now, and I honestly don't know anything about it, but I do want to add more horror to my list, and Rachel Harrison is an author that I have several books of hers on my TBR, and this is one that I've had recommended to me by multiple people, and so I do think that I will pick this up early in the year next year, and yeah, I was excited to see it on the list. The last book that I'm adding to my TBR from the Goodreads Choice Awards is Divine Rivals. I'm a little concerned about this because of the fact that it is YA, and recently YA has not been my friend, but I'm willing to give it a try. I love or have recently loved books about journalists or writing, and I know that that is a connection here. I believe this book follows two journalists who are rivals, and maybe this is like enemies to lovers. I'm not exactly sure what trope it follows with the romance in it, but there's some type of magic as well. I don't know if it's involving the journalism or if it's just in the world. I am excited to get to this. I am just a little skeptical because of the fact that it's YA, but I've heard so many people loved it, and since it won the YA category, I figured I might as well give it a chance. This is also an author that I've wanted to get to for a while, and so this will kind of be my chance to try out Rebecca Ross's books. This will not be like my end-all be-all whether or not I will read this author again because of the fact that it's YA, but I think this will be a good pick for me as far as there are so many different facets of this book that I'm interested in. So the journalism piece, the author that I would like to read from, and I want to like YA so bad. I'm hoping that this will be one that I can love. If you guys have any recommendations from the Goodreads Choice Awards nominees that you think I should give a chance that I have not mentioned in this video, please leave them in the comments down below. I can always be persuaded to add more to my TBR. Let me know also if you guys made any predictions for the Goodreads Choice Awards. Were you correct? Were you wrong? Was there anything that you were mad about? Was there anything you were really glad about the awards? Yeah, I would love to chat with you guys in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.